Hello, everyone. This is round 7 of the World Magic Cup qualifier. Our players are ready. You can see on the left, Christian Calcano. On the right, Ray Perez Jr. Calcano has mulliganed. He opens up with an Azorius Guildgate and Hallowed Fountain from Ray Perez Jr. in return. Mutavault. You're going to see the opening of this be land, 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 land. And the first player that fails to drop a land, that is the sign of trouble. Land go, land go, land go. Andrew Cuneo would be happy. We've got a Temple of Enlightenment here.
And both these players are pretty experienced playing decks like this, right?
That's true. Our first sign of trouble from Christian Calcano, not dropping a second blue source. That means that his dissolves are not in the mix. Syncopate is still a real thing. These players, their opening counter magic in Game 1 are 4 dissolve, 2 syncopate. They both have that same choice. Divination from Ray Perez.
I mean, maybe Calcano has a blue source, and okay, I thought that might be some kind of bait tactic to get him to play a spell.
And
he's holding Syncopate.
A follow-up land from the Divination and an Azorius Charm. Wow, no land drop from Christian Calcano. That's double trouble. Ray Perez.
Yeah, Ray's deck just looks a little smoother to me too. I don't know, like it curves out a little bit better.
That's one of the powers of cards like Quicken and such. And it looks like another missed land drop. End of the turn, a Quicken from Ray just to get through it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is already a matchup that advantages Ray Perez Jr. because of the Elixir. And now being ahead this many lands, it's a very big deal. Another cycling of Azorius Charm from Christian Calcano. And finally, finally, a second blue source. Card stays on top. To me, that would indicate it's likely to be a land.
I would hope so.
And
maybe it's a Jace's Ingenuity.
See another land from Ray. Ray says go. And Christian draws. It's a dissolve that he put there. I think that whatever the card was, if it's not a land, that was not a good choice. And Sphinx's Revelation, this is basically daring Christian Calcano to counter it. And if he doesn't counter it, what he can do, Ray Perez is going to be able to discard some of the dead cards. If he does counter it, he's out of position, and Ray Perez Jr. could perhaps cast an actual scary card like Aetherling.
Mm-hmm. Can't really go Brazilian on Sphinx's Revelation. Back in the day when they like the Let's Effect of Fiction resolve.
Right. Worlds 2000 was that?
Yeah.
Syncopate for 1 does mean that there's the threat of Syncopate for 2. Will Ray continue to act? Main phase Azorius Charm looking for a land. Finds it. That was an excellent play by Ray Perez Jr.
Yep, you just want to keep everything moving.
Detention Sphere drawn by Christian Calcano, and he discards it right away. Another land.
It's a 9-5 advantage now in lands.
And the reason that this mana advantage matters so much is we got a Sphinx's Revelation for 2 here. And a Syncopate for 1. He says no. And mostly I think Ray is just trying to keep Christian from being able to have access to mana. But the reason the mana advantage matters is being able to act and have counterspell mana back.
And there's just an avalanche effect too, right? Like the Sphinx's Revelation for more, getting you more lands and getting you through your deck quicker.
Exactly. This is a really dangerous card in a open board like this. There is a Mutavault that's available on Christian Calcano's side, but at this stage in the game, it's so likely that Ray Perez Jr. has something like a Last Breath. Attacking that Jace is very, very scary. So if this Jace resolves, you're probably going to see it immediately get the Factor Fiction effect from the plus effect. Pardon me, the minus effect, I mean. And even if Ray decides he's got enough cards in his hand already and starts going towards the ultimate ability by plussing it, it's just dangerous for him. We see a small counterspell fight here. Dissolve resolves. Ray says bottom, and I think he's going to present some choices here. Straight to the 2. Quicken, Sphinx's Rev, Supreme Verdict.
Wow.
And it's probably going to be Rev or No.
Rev or No.
If you're just
How many cards would have to be in the other pile?
It would probably have to be like, I don't know, at this moment in the game, I don't know that there's anything that you'd put in the other pile.
Right.
Okay, only 2 mana available from Ray Perez Jr. here. Christian Calcano still stuck. Looks like he did not draw a land again. And he says go. Devastating turn for him to say go, honestly. There's that Jace.
And another land.
And Ray ups it so that he can down it next turn. Or if his hand is too full, he can just keep upping it. Ingenuity.
It's a one-of in Chris Calcano's deck.
This is a really great card to resolve. Now, the way to determine what you counter in this matchup is what happens next turn. If I counter this, will something bad perhaps happen? And I think Ray is actually fairly low on counters right now.
Well, the decks don't actually play that many counters. There's like 6 total in both decks, I think.
6 total in both decks' main deck. And we see that Christian Calcano has finally found a 6th land. And he says go. At the end of the turn, Ray says, I'm going to try Revelations here. And Christian Calcano says, yep. Now, one of the things about these two decks, both players, unless they've shared each other's deck lists, don't necessarily know whether one of them or the other is an Elixir deck. And the difference is huge. If you look at many of the articles written by people that are playing blue-white without Elixir, they talk about that point in the game. Ooh, look at that, an Elspeth discarded. They talk about that point in the game where you just let the Sphinx's Revelation resolve, because at a certain point, decking is what's going to happen. Well, and there's the plus or the minus again. Land versus Supreme Verdict. Okay, it's 1 land versus land and Supreme Verdict, and he takes the untapped land. Plains. Also, this means he can have his deck be a little bit thicker if it's towards a late game.
In case his Elixir does get countered?
In case the Elixir does get countered.
Has that ever happened to you?
Once. And a pass back. All the lands. Christian Calcano, remember, resolved a Jace's Ingenuity. Lays another land. Says go.
It's breathing a little easier with the lands now.
A Dissolve drawn by Ray Perez. That's a good one for him. Plus on the Jace. Another land down. And I think that there's a counting going on there. 12 lands versus 7. Syncopate drawn by Christian Calcano. Land go. And plus land go. Land off the top. It's a Mutavault. 3 mana. D-Sphere. Leaves himself up with 2 dissolves worth of mana. And Ray says, sure, you got it.
Ray doesn't really mind, right?
Yeah, Ray doesn't mind. One of the real advantages of the Elixir build is you can afford to throw cards away to position advantage, whereas Christian Calcano, without that, can't ever hope to ever use a resource that he uses up. Sphinx here for 4, using 7 mana. Draw, 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 draw. And we got the untap.
Do you think he's Sphinxing a little too conservatively?
I don't actually have I can't see enough of his hand to have an opinion. It could be that he's being too conservative. It could be that he's being just right.
I know he had a second Revelation earlier.
Elixir. This is a huge fight right now that he just started. It's question now, how much does Christian Calcano want to fight this? Ray Perez's graveyard is chock full of goodies. And importantly, if this card resolves, it also means that, in essence, all of the things that were a part of this matchup up until now, where they were both on limited resources, all of that goes away if this card resolves.
Chris is thinking about it. He knows it's important.
one of the problems is even if he fights this fight, let's pretend he fights and wins by casting Dissolve. There's so much mana left available. Oh, it resolves, and then a land. And now he's casting an Aetherling afterwards. This is the thing I think that Calcano was kind of hedging against, is that, maybe the follow-up will be an Aetherling, and I don't want to deal with that. And we've got the double counter war here, and boom, boom, boom. Dissolve. That's pretty intensely good. And he's like, that's enough.
Yeah.
That's enough.
Pretty well sculpted turn. Like, knows he has exactly 1 mana left after his 2 dissolves and the elixir and the Aetherling.
Yeah. Now, from the sideboard, though, these things become kind of interesting because the sheer volume of counter magic that enters into the fray is pretty huge. Christian Calcano has 3 negate, 2 dispel, and a gainsay. That's 6 very good counters. Importantly, 2 dispel. Dispel is just so good in this matchup. On the other side, Ray Perez Jr., he doesn't have as many counters, but what he does have is a Jace Memory Adept and a Jace's Ingenuity to bring in as well.
And people are still using the Memory Adept in Control Beers. Doesn't get old.
It's just such a good card against basically 2 primary opponents and then a third class of player. The primary opponents that it's really good against are all of the people that are playing Sphinx's Revelation and then all of the people that are playing Underworld Connections. Or maybe a better way to put it is all of the people playing Thoughtseize. Against those decks, just having a massive amount of card draw, the more the merrier. That's what you want to be doing. Just draw. Nice Thoughtseize. I've got more cards than you're hitting me with. But then that weird third class of player is occasionally you'll have that red player that they see your Jace Architect of Thought and they over-aggressively attack it. That's the kind of player where you actually bring in Jace Memory Adept just as a distraction from your life total. Yeah, both of these players, watching them play earlier, it's clear that they've both had some experience with this deck. But we said before, missing land is one of the biggest death knells in these mirrors. And Christian Calcano missed both color and number early.
Yeah, it was a rough start for him. Which probably shouldn't have happened to him, honestly. He has 1 extra land. But then again, Ray resolved a divination early, and that probably swings it back in his favor if he can get it off.
It is hard when you're playing these decks when you can see an opening hand. And let's pretend that Christian Calcano's hand was, let's say, 3 lands, and it looks pretty good. And then you're just don't see anymore. However, I do think that when he had the Dissolve, as good as Dissolve is, when he used his mid-game Temple, and he doesn't have the land, the Dissolve is not as good as a land.
Yeah.
You just have to get that land. It matters more than that. And I think that might be a little bit of a stumble that he had with his decision making there. A part of the reason that you actually let that Dissolve go to the bottom is that neither of these decks have Gitaxian Probe. This isn't Legacy. This is Standard. Neither of them are playing black for the hand for discard. So if somebody has a handful of cards, it's too dangerous to act all the time. So not having a Dissolve doesn't matter so much as it does having the land, so that at the point when the showdown does happen, you probably will have drawn another counterspell.
Right. And usually when they pull the showdown trigger, they're prepared for you to have 2 Dissolves anyway. So if even if you have them, they're still going to win the counter war. If you only have 1, I mean,
it doesn't matter so much if you can't cast 2.
Right.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here in the booth with Brian Kowal. This is the WMCQ, the World Magic Cup Qualifier in Indianapolis, Indiana. This is GG's Live, and you are going to be seeing at least one more blue-white game out of this. If you're a fan like I am, you're probably pretty excited about it. If you're not, just hang on. We got more Magic coming the entire rest of the day.
What?
Oh.
Are we in game 2 now?
Christian Calcano was the one fell behind in mana in game 1. and has lost. Ray Perez Jr. now mulliganing, both going to 6. That opening hand, I saw Ray had a Jace memory adept in the opening hand, but he must not have had, I'm guessing, land.
Right, and being blue-white players, they waste no time. There's no hemming and hawing, attempts to bluff the decision out a little longer. But they just need to get their mulligans out of the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things I'm really pleased with both of their decisions is how quickly they did that. There are a lot of times where I see people go to time with blue-white, and it's that moment where they waste time doing things like that, and then they wonder why they didn't finish game 3 with, a little bit of time left.
The typical time a lot of players spend way too much time is when there's a bad decision and there isn't a good decision. And they just, they know they have to make that bad decision. They just have to, but they just, sit there kind of almost feeling sorry for themselves for a little while before they make it. That takes time away from your clock. If you're playing blue-white, you can't afford that.
One of the things I like about both of these players, they play their game very efficiently. I didn't see a lot of the slow untap each of my lands.
Right.
They're making quick moves from a physical standpoint, and when you're playing a deck like this, that time does add up. 6 cards for both of these players. And I wasn't sure who was given the choice. And wow, Christian Calcano draws. I don't like that one bit, honestly. This is a mana game before it's a card advantage game.
Okay. You want to be the first one.
You want to be the first one to be able to double threat.
Interesting. Looks like Ray's a little light on the blue mana this game.
So, for example, right here, this Divination is not dangerous when Ray casts it. On the other hand, if Ray was on the draw, the Divination could be dangerous because it could mean that if he's tapped out, Christian Calcano could lay a Jace. That's why you don't want to be on the draw in this matchup.
Ray gets his second blue source.
And there's the Jace. And no. If this had been Christian Calcano on the play, that Jace might have resolved. Or the Divination wouldn't have been cast.
Or maybe, he probably would have had to cast it, though. He only had 2 white sources.
Yeah, so there would be a Jace in play for Christian Calcano instead of for Ray. And now we see the grind. And the question is, does Ray need land, or does Ray need the counterspell? He says he needs the land. Goodbye, Divination. And the 5th land, then. Is that accurate?
That's 5th land.
But should there be one? Yeah, he was on the play. He's on the play. And there's the Detention Sphere. And now Christian Calcano out of position again. If Ray has anything, it's going to resolve. He might not have anything. Christian Calcano also missing a land there. And pass. 6-4 in terms of the land. Main phase Azorius Charm. I like that. Boom. Found the land. Negate in hand. Stroke. That's a Sphinx Rev for 3 end of turn. Draws the negate. Shields down. Shields down. Aetherling on the table now.
Yeah, I believe he did have an Aetherling.
Boom. Yeah, that negate would be a card I don't think I would have cast at all there. Let them have the 3 cards. Now you need to drop an Aetherling or an Elspeth right now. Elspeth's not good enough. You need to drop an Aetherling right now, or the game is probably over.
How about an Elspeth?
Elspeth doesn't do enough. Elspeth gets 3 blockers that are dodged and then dies. And there is the Elspeth in his hand.
Yeah, that's why I said it.
Yeah.
What about just Sphinx's driving for 3 here?
I think, honestly, main phase Rev for 3 isn't great, but it's not much worse than end of step Rev for 3. Ray Perez here, he doesn't even have to go fast. He can, if he wants to, try to hit for 8 a turn, or he can hit for a smaller number. He's in the driver's seat. He's got a Dispel in his hand. He's got a Gainsay in his hand. Attack. He hits for, looks like 4.
Just hitting for 4.
Rev for 3. I think, there you go. He's got that counterspell for it. Gainsay and Azorius Charm in hand. Boom, done. Christian Calcano knows it's over. Wow, that was a very, very quick 2-0 victory for Ray Perez Jr.
Ray seems really comfortable with the deck. Very sure of all of his plays. I like how he played that second game a lot. Just kept putting Christian on the back foot, and like react. Here's my 8th wig.
Yeah, and I think one of the things when that negate was cast, that was a shields down moment. You just have to let Ray get further ahead and hope that he does not pull the trigger. And I don't know if Christian Calcano had a Gainsay in hand or had anything, but the thing is, Ray doesn't know if Christian Calcano has that. So let's pretend that Ray thinks, Aetherling, okay, Gainsay, I dispel, I'm tapped out, then a Detention Sphere gets it. I don't want to do it, I'll say pass. But instead, with Christian Calcano just tapped out, there you go. It's just go for it now.
Yeah. Yep, it's complete safety.
Yeah. One of the things that I learned in watching another match play quite a while ago, there was a Sphinx's Revelation deck with green running Courser of Krufix, and I thought, wow, that's brilliant. It's really amazing how much extra land they'll get. It's going to be just incredible. And the Courser of Krufix was exactly why the player lost, because his opponent knew every play.
Well, speaking of another game, we have the other match. Taylor Gunn is back in the feature match area. He's going to be playing Bruce Edelman. Taylor Gunn playing green-white aggro, a deck we've seen a few times already. And Bruce Edelman playing a black devotion list.
Has a tiny little splash of blue with Far and Away and Notion Thief negate.
This Notion Thief's not going to help him that much. But they're not min.
Sunblade Elf facing off against a Swamp Thoughtseize. We can see, looks like Voice of Resurgence,
Celestia Charm ×2 and Advent of the Worm.
A little bit of
and
glare
then
there.
Mana Confluence.
Mana Confluence as well. It's only a 1/1, but will that change? Nope, still a 1/1. Take it though, 1 damage. Let's have some friends in the form of a Knight. Main phase Knight, maybe he's concerned about negate. Maybe has seen it in game 2.
Maybe it's saw blue source.
There is a Temple of Deceit.
Man, I don't know. I guess he might bring in negate against green-white. There's enough instants and sorceries.
I mean, he's got Advent of the Worm, Selesnya Charm.
Johnny.
A Johnny. Banishing Light on a big demon.
I can see it.
And we see a Soldier of the Pantheon joins the table. And Drown in Sorrow.
Whoa.
That is devastating. Boom. There goes the team. Oh, yeah, there's a scry involved, too.
Yeah. Also, let me look for the next one.
And Taylor Gunn.
It's pretty brutal.
He says go. Decides not to play around in negate anymore. There's a demon. Ouch. And goodbye, demon. You're going to be exiled. Oh, I'm wrong. Wow.
That's an interesting...
Very aggressive. Maybe he's got another one? He does have another one. Oh, yeah, that's right. 2 from earlier in the game. He drew a third one,
apparently. He must have drawn a third one, yeah.
In for 2. I shouldn't have presumed what was going to happen there. Bruce Edelman now. Plenty of cards in hand. Pretty comfortable life total. Says go.
Keeps his card on top.
Hero's Downfall in hand. Freakus Cure, is that? I think it's 2 downfalls and a cure.
He has the cure for soldiers.
No pump or tricks from Taylor Gunn. Looks like we got a turn 5 or turn 6 experiment 1. Always the best time for that card. That's why they call it experiment 5 or 6. Sign in Blood.
It's going to pick up a pack rat. I think a BioBlade.
Yep, we got rats. And another Mana Confluence locks it on Smiter in hand. And is that Advent? Yeah, the Advent's still there.
Well, you can safely swing with that experiment one now.
Here he comes. No blocks. Bruce remembers. And the Bile Blight taking it out. And the rat in play. In comes the rat. And Taylor with the decision whether to make a worm.
Decides to make a worm.
The worm not long for this world.
Heroic worm dies.
And locks it on Smiter in hand. Lays a land, says go. Okay, so to me, that is a Smiter, I think. I think Taylor is hoping that Bruce will Thoughtseize it out of there. Unless it's not a Smiter. Maybe there's not a Smiter in his hand.
I think it's a Smiter. I thought I saw him draw one earlier.
Down to 9. And then lays the Smiter with the mana open. Hero's Downfall. That's it. Mutavault plus that rat. That's going to do her.
Bruce Edelman will improve his record to 6-0-1, and Taylor will go down to 6-1.